Hey, everybody, this is Nathan. Welcome to the Glow Up. We've got a really special episode for you this week. We're talking this week with Charlie Fink. You know him as a producer of worldwide entertainment properties. You know him as a podcast host. You know him as a best selling author of some of the seminal books on spatial computing. He is an adjunct faculty. He is a columnist. He is a super fan and a serial innovative creator whose story I think you're really going to enjoy. We're going to split the episode in half so you can hear an amazing story of Charlie's journey in innovation and the incredible projects and view that he's had on the development of immersive technologies, storytelling, and the current new media landscape. I think you'll really enjoy it. Now let's dive in.
I've been to AWE 9 times, so I'm a student of the medium. And eventually, after writing 3 books, I am also a professor of the medium. And it dovetails with my beat. I study XR all week long. My focus has shifted to AI as XR has matured because I'm more interested, and I always have been more interested in my career to what's breaking and what's new. AI is unique in so much as I believe it is. I never thought I would see a value creation opportunity on the scale of the internet again in my life. I thought that was the big change. The second change, and I missed this completely, was mobile. Mobile changed everything. It changed the internet. It changed everything. And now AI. The idea that we could have a third disruption on this scale over the course of 30 years and to have lived through it does give me a unique perspective that makes my work, I think, unique. That said, I love this community. It's a relatively small community. It is maturing. It is still growing. I think the opportunity is unlimited for wearables. I just think we are going to merge more and more, as Patty Mays famously said, we are going to become cyborgs. Maybe not in the way people think, but that general thought that we're going to get closer and closer to our machines is 100% right. And of course, Patty's perspective is not so fast, right? Because unintended consequences, they say, there's a Greek saying, which is, there is no gift from the gods that comes without a curse. Patty's perspective is, before we rush into that, maybe we should take a beat and consider the unintended consequences. And I will tell you right now that there is no technology that man would not rush into headfirst, regardless of the consequences, especially when the money-making opportunity is clear. So although Patty is right, she is also wrong. That's what academics have the privilege of being wrong about, right? She's researching unintended consequences in the hope that it'll reach somebody in some position of influence. But the truth is, those people are so busy remaking the world in their image, they don't have time to hear about unintended consequences. The users will just have to deal with that. And so that's where we are. That's what's going to happen with AI. Deal with it. I'm a bit of an iconoclast at Chapman. They're like, it's ruining people's cognitive ability. Maybe so is Google Maps. Deal with it. So we should be teaching our students how to be great at using AI. And a lot of them have the opposite view. And I don't blame them. And I feel like here in Los Angeles and Hollywood, there's a lot of resistance to AI and a lot of mourning over the passing of one version of the industry into another. The silly thing about Hollywood, of course, is that everybody in Hollywood thinks Hollywood is the world. And Hollywood is a relatively small industry vis-a-vis all the giant energy, transportation, all these categories that culture, that like Hollywood is like a little pinball. Apple could buy all of Hollywood and it'd be a rounding error.
So this is very interesting, Charlie. This theme of connection, inspiration, and these, community long-term relationships has really taken you through some really cool eras of media, of technology, this very relatable big tech moment in the early teens was just startups were huge. Everything was growth. Unicorns was the way. And if you weren't new, data driven, and immediately viral, like just get out of the way, I heard so many people got disillusioned in tech, with those exact same experiences that you had, seeing all of these foibles and missed opportunities, as well as being a part of some really dope shit. What keeps you coming back to an industry that is kind of small, too early, that has some of these challenges? What is it that keeps bringing you back into the space and keeps capturing your attention?
I feel like part of my mission is to follow this space. Part of my destiny is to follow this space. A lot of my attention has shifted to AI, as has a lot of my teaching. When AI hit the end of 2022, I was, first of all, stunned at how small my thinking about AI had been. Well, I was aware of ChatGPT and that these developments were going on, but my exposure to it made me think it was meh. I didn't have enough imagination to understand what it was going to become. But when OpenAI launched ChatGPT and DALL-E, I started to understand. And I actually said to my wife at that point, because my first book was called Charlie Fink's Metaverse. And it's the only technology book I've ever heard of that actually was a bestseller. And it was an AR-enabled book. It was the first of those. And then Zuck started promoting the metaverse. He changed the name of his company. And it was great for a guy who had written a book called Metaverse. But in the fall of 2022, I saw that the metaverse gravy train was grinding to a halt. Partly because it had played itself out. It's after all that, you mean the metaverse is Roblox? Now that you mention it, yeah. So I know if Matthew Ball were here, he has a much more elaborate and technology-based view of the metaverse, and that is happening in the background. But that's part of the natural development of these technologies like 5G anyway. The real reason, Nathan, is that, and I've learned this about myself, and I had this epiphany when I was about 60. You'd think I would have learned about myself before then, which is that I need to be relevant. I need to be relevant to something. Typically something, I've succeeded most of my career working in niches and working with technologies very early. VR is kind of stuck with me, AR as well. It's been an exciting ride. I don't think our end place was anything like any of us thought we were looking at. My current perspective is that wearables have a big future, and glasses are a fantastic platform for sensors. And when those sensors are working with AI, feeding it contextual data connected to your phone, which has geolocation, you have a very powerful wearable ecosystem, almost an operating system into itself. As far as displays go, the expensive part of that, right? So I'm talking about the Meta Ray-Bans and what should have been Apple's glasses. They killed that effort in favor of the Vision Pro, which will certainly become a business school case study in stupidity. And of course, Meta's, if you have a very specific use case like translation, you can see the argument for it. But again, it can also be done with earbuds or just with regular audio smart glasses. So I guess I would say where I've come down to on display is, first of all, you got to have your phone with you or some pop. And you can put a display. This is a great freaking display. Most people consume all their content on this display. You're never going to have a display that good on your face. So since you have to carry this with you everywhere, what is the point of putting the display in the glasses? It's hard. It's expensive. If I can have all that in frames, or maybe the sensors can be mounted another way, a lapel pin, I have no idea. If I can wear sensors in that way and have them work with my phone and AI to give me, and it's connected to the web, tell me about restaurants on this street. Tell me about the history of this cathedral that I'm looking at. Oh, I've taken a picture of a foreign language menu. Please translate it for me. So all of that can be done without displays. So I'm losing my religion on displays. We've been working on it for 10 years. Now Google's coming out with one and Meta's adding it, doing a version of Ray-Bans with it. And so my experience with Vision Pro is nobody at Apple could tell me what the applications were other than what the device did. Well, 3D photography. So they had no idea what it was for.
Productivity.
Yeah. And it was just a disaster on every level.
The broad spatial computing community spent decades just obsessed about degrees and nits and how much of a screen, how bright of a screen, how full color of a screen. And what you're pointing at is that when you're talking, the only thing that I could think of that requires a screen in many of those instances is that we have been trained that technology is so dumb that smart assistants are not very smart. We want a screen so that we can see the interface, so that we can see with our own eyes and trust that we know what's going on. And that to me is like a user experience problem. One of the major differentiator between all of the AR glasses that are out there, and the one thing that Apple did to contribute to the conversation really was show elegant, considered user experiences that help people get into the technology in a blink so that they can start to ask those next questions and be like useful. And, the laggards are some of the more sort of cutting edge. Like you put them on, you don't know how they work, you have to fumble your way through. Just love this idea that like a screen might just be like a pacifier, that's holding us back to this next layer.
So
It seems like one of those areas where the worry about future malfeasance lost out, unintended consequences lost out to the developers just really need this tool to move this forward.
yeah, so let's see, I'm hoping when those devices come out, they'll come with use cases. Google I/O is going on this week. They sent me a bunch of videos finally of what the experience is like inside of their headset. And it is the same prosaic stuff we've already seen. It's translation, it's directions. I don't know about you. I have a heads up display in my car that I never use. I use the Google navigation system. It's perfectly fine for that purpose. I don't feel like glasses are going to make that better. Reading text messages in your glasses happens to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard. People really want to be interrupted whenever in their field of view, really? And instead, I'm going to have to go up here to dismiss it. I would never choose that feature. Meanwhile, the features that would be really awesome, like facial recognition, are going to be totally illegal.
How do you opt in on a street level?
Yeah, there may be specialized apps that allow you to do that at a conference,
Aura?
something like that. And then they're useless after the conference, but not enough people are going to have the glasses and people aren't going to walk around a conference going like this. But, at AWE, many more people know me than I know. And so people start talking to me. The assumption is that I know them. And in many cases, they are familiar to me because we've all been doing this for 10 years. If I only could put in my glasses who they are, I would be so happy. What would work for me is the AI whispering in my ear, oh, that's Nathan Bowser. People are going to have crazy eyes inside of their glasses. You're going to be talking to somebody in their glasses and they're going to be like looking down like this. And you'll be like, hello?
Like when somebody's when they're in a Zoom call on the Vision Pro and they're multitasking, they like turn away and like they're physically doing
it's just
something
like being on a Zoom call and you see somebody there going like this, totally what they're doing.
Amazing. Charlie, I'm having so much fun. You mentioned some things that you were working on now using AI in media. I'm curious, looking forward, how are these themes of like deep tech and storytelling and AI evolving in your work now?
I'm working on a series of stories about AI in Hollywood and where I think all of this is going to go in the next 5 to 10 years. And it has led me, investigating it and studying it, has led me to working with my friend first on an animated series. And then hopefully it'll lead to a movie or a streaming series. But if you can keep the cost low enough, you can make money on shorts on social media, YouTube and Reels. But you have to keep your costs really low, like $500 a minute. That means that you're going to have to choose content that is native to AI, that takes advantage of AI. That's why it's an anime show, because we all expect a little jankiness from anime. And if you make some shortcuts or you have to do a scene where all you've got is mouth shapes for animation, it's okay, because it's going to be on a teeny tiny little screen. And everybody knows that anime can be very low budget and choppy. We'll see. It's a really interesting project. I love working with Rob Minkoff. The guy's a genius. Creatively, he's great. He and I have been friends for 35 years. So we have a very deep basis of trust. And I completely 100% creatively defer to him. He's so much better than I am. I'm a guy with opinions, but so is every producer in Hollywood. The problem with producers is I will make the most expeditious choices in the interest of the project. And he will make the best artistic choices to service the project. And so the tension is always you have to balance those two things. But if you go with the producer's way, you're just going to end up with a serviceable, low budget project. And we don't want it to be serviceable, right? We want it to be transcendent. We want you to forget about how it was made and care about who's in it and what's going to happen to them. If you're worried about how it was made, you've lost.
Oh my gosh, such great creative advice. I love this idea of a transcendent experience. It leads me to my next question where I talk about goals, right? The show is The Glow Up, which is a notable rebirth or a transformation. I'm curious, as somebody who has had many different lives and careers in this tech and communication space, do you have goals for the next 6 months that you're working on?
It would be great to see the thinking I've been doing about AI in Hollywood become a book. No one really reads books, but it's the fact of the book that matters. And it hopefully could reignite the speaking business I enjoyed after the metaverse was published. Because that was a really good 4-year run. I'd like to have a little bit more of that because, you make money flying to Korea and talking to Samsung or to Dubai and talking to government people. And that was the kind of consulting and speaking I was doing. It was awesome. It paid well. And it hurt that business ended for me. Fortunately, I do have a small consulting business helping tech companies tell their stories and sometimes do strategic planning. And oftentimes I do it for free because I love people. I love to have people in this community. It gives me great pleasure and satisfaction when I see people who are succeeding because I also see many people who disappear. And, I know they were smart people with great vision, but, in this cruel world, so many things have to align with timing and everything else that it's just inevitable that most ideas fail. And I've had way more ideas fail than succeed throughout my career. In the next 6 months, I'm hoping we can get through the social media series with Rob and get it out there and see people's reactions and hopefully make enough money so that we can keep going and use that data to make it more and more popular. We have a big social media / movie star who we've signed up, and we'll make a big announcement about these things probably in the next 4 or 5 weeks. You have to get all the deals closed in a Hollywood way. And believe it or not, that takes longer than it's going to take to produce the actual content. So that's why people are like, Hollywood's going to disappear. I'm like, no, you're going to need celebrities more than ever because in a sea of undifferentiated AI content, it's hard to know what is a real work and what is just synthetic slop. That'll, make your social media feed more entertaining and visual, but it also will clutter things up with special effects. We see with Studio Ghibli or people folding themselves up using the Pika app. And, these things are cute, but it blocks content of deeper meaning. Having a celebrity is going to make a big difference. Also, in general, when you're producing cinematic AI, you have human fingerprints all over it that have to be documented, right, so that you can protect the work. We're doing visual development offline. We're hiring artists to figure out the look and feel of the film because we want to be able to protect it. And it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to protect AI when you don't document what the humans have done. That's the state of the art right now. And also more and more ethical models are hitting the market and those models are going to get better and better. So that legal concern probably will be greatly diminished in the next year or two. And, I still write the column and do the podcast every week. I teach every semester. So all those things dovetail together. To teach, I would have to basically write the column anyway. And to do the podcast, the first 15 minutes of the podcast is news and opinion, which we couldn't do if I hadn't written the column the day before, because that's the script for the podcast. And then the format is like a daily show thing. So we do the kind of news roundup / opinion, the three of us together, and then we bring in whoever the guest is for a 30, 40-minute interview. And we've been getting great guests. We've done 245 shows. I think we've had about 210 different guests. So there's some repeaters in there, but it's funny. I was just looking at our stats because we're getting like 50,000 downloads a month. So I'm better known at this point for the podcast than my writing on Forbes. When people come up to me at AWE, they're talking about the podcast. When I met people at South by Southwest and they're like, oh, you're Charlie Fink. Can you say good morning, everybody? It's like the signature line of the podcast. Good morning, everybody. And I've done it 245 times. And here's advice for your podcast. Longevity really counts with podcasts. The first year, we actually had like 20 people listen to the podcast. Right now, we see numbers like, oh shit, 35,000 people listen to that podcast. It's crazy. But I think that also is because we changed the name of the podcast from This Week in XR a year ago to the AI XR podcast. And that has made a big, significant difference. And I do think, by the way, the conversation about XR, which is no longer new, is about AI.
Yeah. I think it's partly due to my decade in the space and just familiarity, having built a number of prototypes and apps, that I've started to see immersive technology, spatial computing more as a content channel and differentiator rather than a market to build in. I've always talked about, is it MR or VR? It's just the kind of screen you're using. And now there's a goggle-less category for VR too.
There's Light Labs, which is going to, making beings made of light that are photorealistic, chairs that look like you can sit in them that come out of the floor.
Yeah.
That are projected out of the bending light against these panels. I guess they're doing a giant stadium installation where the scoreboard is going to float over the freaking field.
That is the future.
Bonkers. We ain't seen nothing yet. The next 10 years should bring as many surprises as the last 10 has.
Goodness. Charlie Fink, you have been so generous with your time and your insights on this long and storied career. I'm really taken by the sort of presence that you have as you've moved through these different eras of communications technology, and this flexibility that you've had to, move into these different roles and opportunities and even like identities as technology and opportunities have changed. Hands down, you win the award for the most like name drops and just jaw dropping anecdotes. And also as somebody who is a advocate for creators, really, wants to see the designers, the UXers, the artists, the content makers have a part, a voice, a place in, the development of this technology. To hear somebody come from your background, scrape their way into that opportunity and still be engaged and passionate in it so many decades later. Such an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
This has been amazing. Can't wait to hear more.